Hello, everyone.
Perfect. All right, you're coming through on Streamlabs.
Okay.
There we go.
We're in.
Nailed
Wonderful. This is fantastic. Okay, so let's go straight into Melbourne City versus Perth Glory.
Okay, we'll jump straight in.
We're not straight in, but let's not worry about it. Let's get this done. So we're not going to talk too much about this match. It had no implications on the way the finals played out, but we have to talk about everything that happened after the match. Riley Dobson scores the opening goal, gets proposed to afterwards. The dream exit for Riley Dobson, as you've seen Shaun put in the headline there. Just a fantastic night all round for Melbourne City, and in particular Riley Dobson, after what has been a rather bleak season by Melbourne City's high, lofty standards in the W League. I didn't think it was possible to cry at work this much over a football match, but that's exactly what happened. I was in tears. It was just completely perfect, and I wish Riley and her now fiance all the very best, and hope that they get through the tough journey ahead. Shaun, what did you think of this whole thing?
Yeah, so we probably should mention that for anyone that hasn't actually seen the articles, people that might be watching back on YouTube after the fact or internationally or whatever else. So Riley Dobson's 27 or 28, and she's retiring to go and support her partner Matt, who you can see on screen at the moment, who's got a pretty aggressive form of cancer at the moment. So as part of his treatment program, she's going to step away from football for a while just to support him and be closer to him, which in itself is, kind of a devastating result and whatever else, but they managed to turn it into a very happy one. One, of course, as you mentioned, she got the go-ahead goal in her final match, which was fantastic. And then at the conclusion, as cameras were kind of following her around, and I'm curious as to know how much her teammates actually knew about it in advance, and her family and all that sort of stuff, because the cameras are obviously following her, just kind of general stuff, for a retiring player, as she goes and thanks her parents and her family and the fans and whatever else. And as that's happening, the camera kind of cuts and shows him. They have a brief hug. She goes to, talk to someone or whatever else, and as she turns back around, he's down on one knee. So fantastic imagery for the league itself. Obviously we wish Matt and Riley both all the best for their upcoming difficult journey, and then just echoing your sentiment, Stephen, wishing them all the best for their future wedding and engagement and all that sort of chaos. I'm planning a wedding at the minute, so I know it's pretty hectic, so best of luck to both of them. I hope it all goes very, very well. But a beautiful story, and for what hasn't been a great season for Melbourne City, a really fantastic and heartwarming end. So that's really the most we could ask for.
Yeah, it's Riley actually revealed on the ABC Grandstand podcast yesterday, or when I say yesterday, Monday, which is when that particular podcast drops, that she had two proposals knocked back that she made in the lead up to all of this. So I can imagine that Matt knew exactly what he was doing, and that the team was in on it to make sure that everything went perfectly. And I would assume that this would have happened win, lose or draw, and it just so happens that it was a win to make everything, come together in that fairy tale ending that really only happens in movies and somehow happens in real life too. Who'd have thought? But we do need to talk about the games that actually have an impact on the way that this W League season is going to conclude. So we'll jump straight into Canberra United versus Sydney FC. This was a very dour game. 0-0 draw. Not from Canberra's lack of trying. They did try to get some goals, but just weren't able to find the back of the net. They sealed themselves a top four finish. I thought they actually had to win this game in order to secure themselves in the top four going in. So it was only afterwards that I'd actually realised that because of the goal difference, they stayed ahead of Adelaide. This sets up an exciting Big Blue coming up on Wednesday between Sydney FC and Melbourne Victory, where both teams can still win the Premier's Plate. Was this game for both teams simply a matter of getting through unscathed, knowing that they have the finals ahead of them, Shaun?
I think while I'm going through this, you can try and refocus your camera because people can't see the beauty that is Steven Poletti at the moment. But
no one wants to see the beauty that is me, but sure.
I do. I always do. This one, to me, just screamed as two teams that were desperate to avoid defeat. Because as we know, if Sydney FC had lost this game, not picked up the point, they would have put themselves in a situation where not only could they miss out on the title, which they've basically been top of the league for the majority of the season, they could have also potentially slipped into third spot, depending on how results went for Victory and Brisbane Roar. So they were desperate to pick up at least a point. And for Canberra, they knew that they had to pick up at least a point to try and get that top 4 finish and jump above Adelaide. A loss for both sides would have been kind of devastating to them. What I think this ended up being was two sides that were terrified to lose, and some of the risks that potentially you might have seen in transitional moments, in moments where, you know, they might have tried to break forward from midfield or whatever else, didn't really come and didn't really happen. I think it was two sides that were definitely trying to put the defensive side of the game first and trying to get a clean sheet, and that's why we ended up 0-0. Michelle Heyman was busy trying to do quite a bit. Courtney Vine, you can see on here, I thought was Sydney's most impactful player in terms of her running in behind and her license to kind of get forward, but to me, this just kind of screamed, we don't want to lose. We don't care about winning. We just don't want to lose. We don't want to be that side that increases the pressure going into last week. So this could be a fascinating one as well, because depending on how the makeup of the top 4 goes, we could see these two sides match up again in a couple of weeks, and they are relatively evenly matched, as we've seen. I think Sydney beat them 4-0 early in the season, Stephen. Did I remember that correctly? That was a blowout. The other contest, obviously, that we've seen here was relatively tight and relatively even, and they matched up a lot better, I think, across the park. But whatever that return fixture is, it'll likely be at Sydney's venue if Sydney do finish in that top portion. And yeah, from there, anything can really happen, I think. It's a good Canberra side, but I think Canberra are at their best playing out of that Canberra stadium. And for the finals implication, like they would have really been trying to get the 3 points and get themselves back into that top 2 discussion to get that home advantage, which I think they would be desperately looking for. But huge credit to Canberra. Unlucky to Adelaide. We're probably not going to talk about them because they didn't have a game. I thought they were excellent this season. I think they're incredibly unlucky to not make the top 4. But, that's the nature of the W League at the moment. It's a relatively even contest and all the sides can beat each other. And unfortunately, this year, someone had to miss out. And Adelaide still haven't made a final series in their W League history. But you'd think if they can keep that group together, it's certainly on the cards for the next few seasons.
Yeah, I definitely think Adelaide were unlucky to miss out. Only missing out on goal difference, a single goal. It's, I don't know. I think goal difference needs to possibly go by the wayside, and you go either on head to head. There's got to be something, because there's no way that Adelaide should miss out because of a single goal that they conceded or didn't score, or.
Well, I guess maybe the opposite side of that coin is if they can get some more teams in and have a top 6 to finish the season, that's another conversation that should happen, where they've got 6 quality sides in that competition. And that means that, we know Western United is pushing to get a team in the league. We know that MacArthur's also pushing to get a team in the league. We know Wellington should have had a team in the league this season, but wasn't allowed due to various restrictions and whatever else. I think if they can get those additional kind of 3 teams, get it to a 12-team comp, get it to a top 6 as a finals finish, and maybe 1 and 2 get a home elimination final and a bye the first week of finals, and that's how we kind of balance it back out, like the initial days of the A-League. I think that's really what they need to push for and get to, because it's not necessarily that Adelaide, none of the top 5 sides don't deserve to be in that competition, if that makes sense. But the question I posed to you last week was a Brisbane Roar side without Claire Polkinghorne, without Emily Gielnik, without Katrina Gorey, they're keeping Tamika Yalla, but, would they have made that top 4 discussion? And I don't know if they would have. I don't know if they would have finished above Adelaide, given how strong Adelaide's home form was and given how excellent I think their play was going forward. So, yeah, there's a bunch of different discussions and threads that we can probably unpack a little bit further in the off-season for the W League. But, yeah, it would have been very interesting to see if this league had gone for another round or another 2 rounds, or potentially hadn't been, the truncated season that we've experienced with so many games jammed into such a tight fixturing week. If it had been a full home and away season, if it had been, 1 week between each and everyone's games, would results have been different? Would teams have had more time to scout their opposition, go through their training schedules, all that sort of stuff? But yeah, we desperately need an expanded W League competition for the overall good and quality of women's football in the country.
Yeah, a full home and away season still would have seen a lot of races still to play. I believe a full home and away season with the current 9 teams would have taken it to 16 games, if I've done the math right. So that's another 4 games. Who knows what would have happened? I mean, Brisbane might have fallen away by the wayside, which probably would have reflected the way that their season is finishing, but that's simply because of their noted departures, which we'll get into. in the next game when we talk about that. I want to go just talk about Sydney again for a second. So we've got Courtney Vine, who's now out indefinitely with a knee injury. What does that do to Sydney's title chances?
It hurts their balance quite a bit. What I'll be interested to see, so they've got some good players off the bench. Alira Toby's excellent. I think would start in most other W League squads, but obviously can't get ahead of Remy Simpson. Princess Sabini's been a bit up and down. I don't think she had the best last kind of 3-4 weeks, but when she's on and she started the season really well, she's fantastic. So they've got depth in players that I think they're going to bring through. I don't think it's going to kill their finals aspirations, but Courtney Vine's obviously been a massively important part of that front three, which has done so well for them this season. So, shame for Courtney Vine. I don't know if she's ruled out for the whole final series. Do you know that for sure?
No, it's at well, when Sydney put out the statement today, which was in their inclusions or their rostered squad for tomorrow night, it just had outs Courtney Vine indefinite knee. So could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be 6 months. We don't. They put an indefinite timeline on it. So
if I can,
I'd imagine if it's a knee injury that with a week and a half left to play, 10 days, I would imagine that that's not going to mean that she plays again this season. But it could also be as simple as it's a precautionary rest, if that makes sense.
Shout out to our Pirate Leo 101 in the chat who said, how good is that game is? I'm not sure what he means, but it was a decent contest between two very good sides. I wonder if that's a bit of double bluff though, Stephen. Potentially they're resting her because she's got that slight knock for the victory game with a view to trying to get her back and fully fit for finals in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, time will tell with that one. Oh, sorry, it's a week's time, isn't it? They're this coming weekend. So Wednesday night for the victory game. 5 days,
basically.
Crazy.
Yeah, Sunday night, so it's 5 days away.
Yeah, so
the first semi-final, and the second one is on the Monday. Still haven't announced. I'd assume that the W League is waiting to work out exactly how the table finishes before they announce playing what fixtures. Do you think there'd still be a possibility that if Melbourne Victory get a home semi-final, that they play that as part of a double header with the Big Blue on Sunday?
Let's jump forward and have a look at the next game and talk through Victory's chances if that works.
Yes, that does make sense. We'll move on to Victory and Glory now. Victory hit Glory for 6 here. This game started off as a bit of a competitive contest, the way I saw it. I thought that Perth were unlucky to concede their first 2 goals. And then after going into the sheds 2-0 down at half-time, it's just Melbourne Victory put on the pressure and we ended up with the 6-0 scoreline. It was an absolute battering. Are Victory going to be the team to beat going into the finals, given their current run of form?
No, I don't think so. I think Sydney FC and Brisbane have performed at a consistent level above what Victory have. I think it's crazy that Victory have had 2 6-0 victories throughout the course of the season, but then got beat 6-0 as well. And that kind of shows how wild their form can be week to week, and how I think potentially the 4 players that are on screen at the moment, Cooney Cross, Zimmerman, Ayres and Beard, they tend to drive how they're playing tends to drive how the side's doing. Even Lisa Devanna, I saw a head-to-head thing between her and Courtney Vine on the W League Twitter during the week, and she's only got 1 goal for the season and 1 assist maybe from her 9 appearances. So they're definitely pushing to go kind of deep in the finals race. I don't think any of us looked at Melbourne Victory a week ago and looked at their remaining fixtures and thought they can finish top if everything goes their way. I think we were purely looking at it for how do they make it into the finals race and how do they go through and find, some sort of form moving into that one. Potentially, if they beat Sydney FC, they will win the division, and I don't think any of us saw that coming. I don't think there's many sides throughout the W League's history that could say they got beaten throughout the course of a season 6-0 and then managed to still find a way to win the league. But obviously, that's a huge if. They've got a big test against Sydney coming up. In the chat, we've got North Beach Asian, a bit off topic. What's the kit you're wearing in the mixer under _FM? Both Stephen and I have our Ladies League kits on, which you can see here. I'm wearing the home kit or the away kit, and Stephen's wearing the home kit. You can get those at theladiesleague.com.au. Go and check them out. They do some fantastic work for women's football. But a wonderful cover kit.
Speaking of that, they've got a fantastic range of content coming out this week leading into the Big Blue, some of which is already up on YouTube. The best place to follow them is on Twitter. I'll look up their handle now because I've literally forgotten it off the top of my head. It is at Ladies A League. Go check them out. You can find all their content there, their website. They're a fantastic bunch of people. We'll get back to this game though. I think that Melbourne Victory are going to be the team to beat. Sydney have looked a little bit out of sorts. Once they cop that defeat to Brisbane, I think that Victory likely having home ground advantage leading into this will give them a chance.
Hold on. Before you go past that part, what is your pick for Wednesday night? So here's the scenario. We should kind of highlight people that aren't doing it. For the people that are listening that maybe don't know. So if Victory and Sydney FC play each other in the final game of the season this Wednesday night or tomorrow night, if Sydney FC win or gain a point, they will finish as premiers. If Melbourne Victory win, they leapfrog both Sydney and Brisbane into that top spot, and they will finish the season as premiers. So if Victory are going into that on the back of winning a title and playing a home final, yes, perhaps they are the team to beat. If they don't, if Sydney FC and Brisbane go through as the home finalists, I think that home advantage is going to be huge, and I think it would be huge for Victory as well. I think if they're playing their finals games away from home, I don't think they become the team to beat. I think they become similar to Canberra. I think there'll be a side that has to work incredibly hard to try and get a result through their season. If you go through their results, they haven't had like a big win away against a Brisbane or against a Canberra or against an Adelaide or against who's the other team? I've already forgotten. Brisbane, who spanked them 6-0. So, I think that's the part that's missing for them, and that's why I don't necessarily view them as being the team to beat, because I think their away form isn't necessarily as strong as what we've seen from some of the performances from the rest of the teams in the top four.
Okay, that's a perfectly valid argument to make, but I am going to throw something out at you right now, which will help us segue nicely into our Brisbane versus Newcastle game. A range of lockdown measures coming into southeast Queensland, and this is your little COVID update. Could we see Brisbane Roar, even if they finish second, not be able to play at home? And where would they hold that game? Would the easiest place to hold it, if say it's Victory versus Brisbane, would the easiest place be to hold it down in Melbourne? Just because of the short timeline that they have to actually turn this around, given that I would expect that 2v3 game to be the Sunday and the 1v4 game to be on the Monday.
I don't know if Brisbane, and this isn't any negative against Brisbane, I don't know if they'd cede home ground advantage like that. I think they'd be more likely to go into Sydney and play like at a dead venue or a hub location or something like that. I think that would be more likely, because then if they go through, the likelihood is that they then have to have a conversation about, do they play Sydney the week after? So I think it's more likely, is it even a week after? It's like 5 days after or something, I think, based on current scheduling for the finals.
So you've got Sunday, so you've got the 4th, which is the Sunday, that's semi-final 1. Semi-final 2 is Monday the 5th, and that leads into Sunday the 11th of April as the grand final.
So 6 days turnaround.
As the schedule currently sits, but we've seen schedules change on an instant because of this COVID season, so we have absolutely no idea. But I would assume that if they can get the side, if they can get the Brisbane side out of southeast Queensland, which is changing rapidly, then I don't foresee any changes to that. I think it's going to be a little bit of it's going to be an interesting way to go about these next few days.
Yeah, I guess that's a good segue for us to jump into the Brisbane game. Their 3-0 victory against Newcastle, which does put them into top spot as things currently stand. So they're guaranteed a home final no matter what, but as you've just mentioned, unlikely to actually take place. They're not going to delay that fixture. So I'd be surprised if it's played anywhere in Queensland. Maybe Queensland could play in like the Gold Coast. I'll be completely transparent. I don't know what the actual lockdown measures are like between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and then also like further north, like if they were to go out to the Sunshine Coast or even Townsville or something like that. But
as I currently understand it, the lockdown measures are currently for the greater Brisbane area.
Mm-hmm.
But I did also see a report today that there is a tradie on the Gold Coast who has picked up COVID, but that was as a result of his part-time job as a stripper in Byron Bay. So that's So that's an interesting way to look at it, that you'd assume that given how quickly they went into lockdown for the Greater Brisbane area, that this confirmed case on the Gold Coast would very quickly see similar lockdown measures implemented. So the only bet, if they keep it in Queensland, would be to go north. Maybe somewhere like Ipswich, which is far enough north.
Well, do you mean like
Greater Brisbane?
Townsville?
It has a very good ground there to use, assuming that the Ipswich Jets aren't using it.
Isn't Ipswich like in the west of Brisbane?
No, Ipswich is right on the. No, it's about 4 hours north, I think. We're doing
that Google thing again. This is what our W League concepts have actually become. Like all these recaps every week, it's about us.
Wait, no, you're right. What am I thinking of? I'm not thinking.
You're thinking of Townsville?
What am I thinking?
Townsville?
No, Townsville's far north. I'm thinking of. Now I'm actually doing my maths. Where is it? It's
So Sunshine Coast would be the next one north.
It's mid north. It's mid north coast.
Rockhampton, Mackay, Townsville.
I'm thinking of Mackay. I was thinking of Mackay. Why did I think Ipswich?
That's all right. It's fun.
I know, but I was thinking of Mackay, Mackay or Rockhampton or something like that.
Queensland all blends together after a while. It's all fine. There's the Wet and Wild and Movie World, and then there's the rest of it.
Apologies to all our Queensland viewers.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think they'll be okay with everything that we've gone through there. But yeah, good result for them. Do you want to have a look at the ladder now, and we'll go through that last little permutation?
So there are a couple of things I want to talk about with Brisbane first. So they secure second spot. They can't finish anywhere else other than second. They've, as we already mentioned, they've lost Gorey, they've lost Gelnick, they've lost Polkinghorne. But they have re-signed Sonny Franco from the Newcastle Jets for the finals. This news broke at about 5 o'clock this afternoon, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Now, I've seen a very mixed response to this on my timeline, Shaun. I don't know if you've seen this. There's been a lot of uproar about the fact that someone can play for a team and then sign for another team once they're eliminated and go into the finals. The fact of the matter is it's in the W League rules. And we all want a longer season. We all want more money into the W League. We all want the players to get paid. If this is how Sonny Franco has been able to go about getting more game time and getting more money and actually have a chance to compete for silverware, we shouldn't be blaming her for that. And I don't think the rules need to be changed. Like, I don't see how someone who's been playing at Newcastle all season, really haven't been in any sort of finals contention, moving to another side should be creating any controversy if it's within the rules.
I disagree, because you should have to play at least. You should at least be named in a squad at some point through the regular season to make the final series. They're not two separate competitions. So, like, the way that this has been treated is similar to when A-League clubs will sign short-term contract deals for, like, Champions League campaigns to try and get, like, an off-season squad together, because they have to pay that additional portion due to, like, May, usually end of May contract expiries for the summer season. But, yeah, so this doesn't, like, Sonny Franco didn't play for Brisbane at any point throughout the season. She wasn't in their squad. If she goes in and starts those games or is on the bench, then, yeah, I see it as being completely unfair, because a team is going in effectively with additional players into the final series, which shouldn't really be allowed. I like, if Brisbane had put together that dominant a squad, and this is not criticism of them, I think they have a good squad, and I think Jake Goodship, and congratulations to him as well, he had a baby during the week, whose name I've completely forgotten, but congrats to him and his partner. Like, they should have enough faith in the ability of the rest of the group and the rest of the squad that they've been training with now for 15 weeks, that know the system, that know the style, that even though Gielnik and Polkinghorne, whoever else are dropping out, they know what's required. Like, to me, you shouldn't be able to have a player make their debut for a club in a semi-final of a 12-week competition. That's just not... That it doesn't sound fair, because she wasn't registered during the regular season with them. If she had made a move maybe 4 weeks ago, and we don't have inter-team transfers throughout the course of the W League season, if that had happened, then I'd be fine with it, if she actually had been there for the run into the season. But yeah, like, it's a brand new signing purely for 2 games, if they can make it through those games. So yeah, I don't understand how it's allowed. Like, obviously you've mentioned the W League rule system allows it, but that doesn't mean it's the right decision and the right move. Otherwise, you'll see what's to stop someone who does have a bit, like, and we know that Brisbane has a bit of cash because they've made money off the Gielnik and Polkinghorne sales. Who's to say that they're not going to go and poach the best players from Melbourne City? Like, would everyone be just as upset if they went and signed Jenna McCormick from City or Emma Checker or Alex Chidiac or whoever else. I don't think that's going to happen because they're in long-term deals at City. But, there are good players outside of the top 4 race, and it shouldn't be the top 4 shouldn't then have the ability to cannibalise the rest of those squads just because they can offer them another 2 weeks games. Because at the end of that, I'm pretty sure Sonny Franco will head back and go and play WMPL football in one of the states. I don't think this is going to be a long-term thing where she's a Brisbane Roar player for the next 2-3 years or anything like that. So, yeah, I don't agree with it, and I kind of understand why people are a bit frustrated with it. And we know that Twitter's a bit of a microcosm and a bit of an echo chamber sometimes with these things. It may not be necessarily reflective of everybody in the league, but yeah, I don't think it's the right thing to be allowing players to make jumps a week, like 2 days after Newcastle season's finished. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it, but happy to disagree with you.
No, that's fair. I think we're going to agree to disagree on this one. I can completely understand where you're coming from, and I don't disagree with your point in principle. I'm just, as we all know, well, as you're all about to learn if you don't already know, I'm a huge stickler for the rules. I think that play to a T, I've always been a huge fan of play to the whistle, things like that. Like, this is essentially playing to the whistle. It's currently in the rules. No one said you can't do it, so therefore, why not do it? Is it in the spirit of the game? Possibly not, and you mentioned that point, but I don't have a problem with it. It'll be interesting to see if Sunny actually features for Brisbane or if she's just an option off the bench. Like, she started all 12 games for Newcastle. She scored 2 goals this season. So, if she's an unused substitute for both of those games, then this could just be a whole big brouhaha for nothing, and it's just a way to get some extra money in her pocket.
Yeah, I think the point is that they haven't signed her, obviously, to be an unused substitute, or they wouldn't have signed her. They're signing her with the intention that she's going to play, and I would expect her to jump into one of the positions that potentially Gielnik was taking in that team, which is not necessarily in the spirit of the game. I'd hope this is a one-time thing, and this is just Brisbane doing this one time to try and round out their squad. And look, I don't know what their squad depth's like. Potentially, if they've already released talent to go and join up with their WMPL teams or something like that, maybe they need an extra body to fill out a bench for next weekend. But, again, this isn't the right way to go about it when they've got so much, MPLW, Queensland quality in that state. It is a very good MPLW competition that they could be pulling from. And there's a whole bunch of players there that I'm sure are desperate for an opportunity to play W League football or get that exposure that aren't getting it for someone who just played 12 games during the regular season, albeit for a side that wasn't that great in the division. And I put this the same way, we know Canberra probably can't afford to do that and can't afford to bring players in. Otherwise, they probably would sign half of Western Sydney's squad. They probably would sign half of Melbourne City's squad for the last 2 games of the finals. But again, that's not really in the spirit. The team that you've carried throughout the course of the season should be the team that represents you in the finals. The decisions that Brisbane have made to sell Polkinghorne and Gielnik, if they've done them and they're now worried that they're going to be under strength for that final series, then that's on them. They made that decision. They could have started those transfer dates 2 weeks down the track to say, hey, finish the season, and then they'll move across. But, anyway, we can agree to disagree. Rules are, I get what you're saying about rules are important and whatever else, but some rules are stupid and need to be changed. And if that's where it is, that's where it is.
Oh, well, it's going to give the W League a lot to think about as we come into next season once this is done as to what rules may or may not need to be changed. To be completely honest, I had no idea this was even a rule until today. So, I don't know, maybe it's because I've only been following the W League really closely this year, and last year I was only an avid viewer. Maybe this has happened before, maybe it hasn't. I don't know. So if someone knows this happened before, please, by all means, let us know in the chat below or hit us up on Twitter. But yeah, I think that this is a rule that's going to get changed in the off-season, for better or for worse. We'll move into the ladder now. So we have Perth Glory finishing their season, no wins, 1 draw, 11 losses, a single solitary point. A huge commiserations to Perth Glory. We didn't even know if they were going to be able to play their season, just a couple of weeks out from the competition start date. So full credit to them. I believe that they'll be able to take these experiences into next season. A lot of their squad did come from Perth's MPLW competition, so a lot of valuable experience for them, even in defeat. Newcastle, 7 points, 2 wins, 1 loss, 9 draws. Melbourne City, 4-1-7. and Western Sydney also 4-1-7. Both teams on 13 points. Adelaide just outside on goal difference in 5th spot. 7 wins, 1 draw, 4 losses, 22 points. 6-4-2 is Canberra's regular season record with 22 points. Melbourne Victory, still a game to play, 7-2-2, 23 points. Sydney FC, also still a game to play, and it's going to be a cracker of a game tomorrow night. 8-1-2, 25 points in Brisbane, currently in top spot, although we know that they will be in second tomorrow night, regardless of result, at 7 wins, 4 draws, and 1 loss. Just to quickly talk about the Big Blue before we move on, that game is at Cromer Park tomorrow night, and entry is free. You do not need to get a ticket. The gates will be open. Show up, get out, support the W League. It is set to be a fantastic game of football there at Cromer Park. If you have the opportunity to get to that game tomorrow night, you will be treated to an amazing game of football featuring 2 of the finalists. This is an opportunity that you do not want to pass up. We'll do a quick preview of the finals now, even though we don't know where they're going to place. We're going to put our little Nostradamus predictions to work here. I think we're going to see Sydney on top. I think that Sydney will be able to get a draw and secure themselves top spot, which will see them play Canberra United. It will see Brisbane host Melbourne Victory. I see Sydney beating Canberra United, given that the game will take place here in Sydney. I've got Victory beating a weakened Brisbane side, so we will see, if I'm right, we'll see Sydney and Victory face off in yet another Big Blue for the grand final on Sunday, the 11th of April. That game will also be back in Sydney. I've got Sydney winning the whole thing. Shaun, what do you think?
This is like I'm not usually a negative person, Steven, but the negativity in me is like calling out, thinking that Victory is going to roll Sydney on Wednesday night and just disappoint everybody in the division, because I don't think anyone really... I think many people are picking Victory as like their team that they wanted in the top 4, and then they've kind of proved everyone else wrong, and then I don't think anyone...
I wanted them out. I wanted 2 losses this week. I wanted Perth to steamroll the Victory, and Sydney to steamroll them on Wednesday night and have them miss out, but they're here now, so
yeah,
make the most of it.
And now I think they're going to beat Sydney somehow, probably through a jammy like 1-0 Lisa Devanna goal, and then she'll do something like elbow someone in the back of the head behind play and not get called on it, but whatever else. So I think they're going to go top. I think they'll finish top against and push Brisbane into second. I think Brisbane will play Sydney FC likely in Sydney, based on the current lockdown restrictions. I think Sydney FC will win that game regardless of how many Sonny Francos get signed throughout the course of the week. And I think Victory will prefer to play Canberra in the final series than any other side in there. I think that's the team that they look as being the best matchup. I don't think Sydney FC would necessarily want to play Canberra United, even though they have beaten them previously in the season. I think they match up quite well, and I think what we learnt last week is that if Canberra stay pragmatic and try and really frustrate Sydney FC, that they're capable of doing it. And there's a big question mark, I think, over Courtney Vine as being like the most likely person that could have unlocked that Canberra defence, given they're a little bit slow on that left-hand side of their central defensive and left-back partnership. So, yeah, there's a few different layers to that one. So I think Victory are going to probably leapfrog everybody. I think they'll go through beating Canberra, and I think Sydney FC will go through beating Brisbane, given that they don't have Polkinghorne, they don't have Gielnik, they don't have Gorey. So, yeah, potentially we're going to look at one this Wednesday or tomorrow night, this not just being the premiership decider, but potentially in a week and a half's time, the title decider as well. So should be an exciting game. Looking forward to seeing how these two line up against each other.
Okay, so we've both got Sydney and Victory playing in the grand final. I've got them hosting in Sydney. You've got it being hosted down in Melbourne. Do you have Victory winning it?
Oh, that's tough. If Victory can get a home final, if they can finish it on top as premiers, that momentum will carry them all the way through, I think. If it goes the way that you're thinking it is, where Sydney does, I think that momentum will carry Sydney through. And potentially the fact that even if they do, kind of see Brisbane sneak their way through, I think they'll be feeling pretty confident that playing all their remaining games in New South Wales will be a good advantage for them.
Okay, so you've got Sydney FC going down to Melbourne twice in 2 years and losing the grand final. Oh, I hate you. We'll move on to the A-League now. given that we've kind of dissected everything we can with the W League from every angle, and we'll have a full grand final preview next week, given that we will be on air after both of those semi-finals take place, barring any further delays. As you can see from the caption, City smashed to 6 straight. That's the first time they've ever won 6 straight in their team's history, either as Heart or City, if I've got my...
you are 100% correct.
I'm 100% right. Beautiful. Okay, so I've got a few questions to ask here. Did this game live up to its expectations of 2 top 4 sides going at it? And can Melbourne City maintain this momentum all season, or have they peaked too early? And can you actually peak too early?
You can, I think, hit top form too early in the season and then have like little blips or little bounces. Like, I think the challenge is when you hit top form and you get into a settled lineup, if that lineup gets disrupted, it can have a disruptive impact on like the performances of the team, whatever else. It wasn't that long ago that City lost 3 straight going into this run of 6 wins. So like, we know that if they get a little bit wrong, if they get a red card, if they get whatever else, like there can be issues that come up in that. And I think the other one that everyone's highlighting, maybe focusing on too much, because I think there's quite a bit that's gone into City's resurgence, but Naboot, who's on screen at the moment, him coming back into the side has definitely given them more balance and taken some of the focus away in an attacking sense away from Jamie McLaren, which I think has helped them quite a bit as well. So yeah, I think there's a few different things that have worked to like really go right for City, and if one of those kind of falls away, it does potentially cause disruption. What I would say is that this City side, and going even back to the Melbourne Heart days, Nuno Reis picked up a knock about 10-15 minutes into this contest and went off, and they had to reshuffle. Roston Griffiths went centre back, Connor Metcalf played deeper in midfield, Luna came on. Usually that would disrupt a team enough that they don't go on and play to the same level, but like it was like watching, if anything, they shifted gears upward and they went into like 3rd and 4th gear. And I think I said to you, Stephen, last week that until Western Sydney get a big game like this one where they roll into town as potentially being one of the top 2 or 3 sides in the competition and win it, we can't really take them seriously as being a top 4, top 6 side. And again, like they've had a couple of games now where they've gone and played Macarthur, where they've gone and played Central Coast, where they've gone and played Sydney, where it really looked like being a big marquee fixture for them that they needed to perform their best in. And again, they've kind of faltered. So I think there are still question marks over Western Sydney. I think the way they set up was wrong as well. I think Western Sydney fans on Twitter will savage me, and that's fine because they're slowly approaching victory levels of delusion on there, and that some of them needs to be brought down a peg or two. But like the way that they were just standing off the ball and letting City play out, it wasn't like it played into City's hands, and the way that they wanted to kind of isolate fullbacks and wingbacks. And really, I think what they did very effectively, and they did it as well in the away game in Western Sydney about 3 weeks ago, was isolated that space in between the fullbacks when they'd pushed on, or the wingbacks for Western Sydney, and the central defenders of their back 3. When do they come wide? And Mark Natter and Ziggy Gordon both, I thought, got dragged into positions that they didn't necessarily want to be in. And then their defensive transition is a bit tricky from there because they don't know how their central defenders are sliding across, and it created all sorts of gaps and all sorts of space. This one could have had probably like 2 or 3 more goals for City based on the balance of play. Western Sydney got their go-ahead goal early on, very much against the run of it. I think it was like the second time they'd had possession in their half. A fantastic run and cross from Mitch Duke, and a good finish from Bernie Abini. Well done to Daniel Wimmering, who I think recovered possession as City kind of lazily played out. Like they really kind of gave possession back in a bad area. But then after that, like City just put their foot down, as I mentioned, and really just smashed through 4 goals and could have had 3 or 4 more if Jamie McLaren had had a better finishing day, if, some different decisions had been made in terms of the final ball. Even late on, once those young players, like you've mentioned Marco Tilio a few times, coming on with like garbage minutes, 5-10 minutes. He comes on, Kolakovsky comes on, Garucha comes on, and again, they're still finding ways to kind of get through and potentially add more goals to it. So, yeah, big win for City. They now have 2 games in hand on current top of the table Central Coast Mariners. If they win both those games, they will go up into top spot, which I think they'll be looking to do. And once they get that top spot, there's 2 decisions that could happen. They could crumble, and that pressure of not being the the predator instead of the prey will get to them, or alternatively, they're just going to keep rampaging through sides and really be difficult to catch in the second half of the season. There is one more side, though, that I think is potentially the other one that we need to talk about as being one of the big teams looming large to potentially go top of the table in the next couple of weeks. But what were some of your thoughts from the, I'm not going to say neutral as a Sydney FC fan, but from the Sydney's perspective?
Yes, no, we going tongue-tied a little bit there. We will be talking about that other team when we talk about a game later on, as they played last on Sunday night in this particular round. I thought this game was good. I think that too much stock has been placed by Wanderers fans in Craig Noon's goal and the way that played out. Just is that they considered it just almost like a turning point that shouldn't have been allowed to stand, but City looked incredibly good regardless. I don't think you can say anything that at no point did Western Sydney look like they were going to win this game. Even when they went ahead, they did it against a run of play. I think Melbourne City are doing this because they have a point to prove. They did so well last season and then just ran into the Sydney FC juggernaut. I think as well that the Wanderers just look like a side that just is going to beat up on the lower teams in the division and get easy wins over your Newcastles and your Victories and rack up the points that way. Are we offline?
We have briefly gone offline, but it will continue recording and take us through, so we're all good. So, yeah, apologies to anyone in the chat that is trying to refresh their page at the moment, but our recording is all good and the stream automatically just reconnects. I think it's a Twitch issue, not necessarily ours.
Okay, so apologies for that. If you've missed anything watching on Twitch, you will be able to catch this on demand on YouTube starting from tomorrow when it gets uploaded. Where was I? Yes, so I think that the Wanderers are going to beat up on the lower teams, your Newcastles, your Victories, your Glories, and get 3 points in those, which will kind of give a false sense of security to where they actually are, because they'll sneak in that 5th or 6th spot with what looks like a good record, but in reality is a lot of wins and losses as opposed to middling draws. So I could see them ending this season at say 10-4 and 10, and getting into the finals that way.
I think Western Sydney could potentially become a top 4 side, but they need to win games like this one, and that's the big thing that's letting them down at the moment. As you mentioned, they are a little bit of a flat track bully where they are beating the teams lower than them in the division. Most of the points that they've picked up. So 6-4-4 is relatively even split in terms of their results and whatever else. We are now starting to see that separation between teams that have won 6 games and teams that have won 8, 9 and 10, which is really that top 3 that's kind of starting to form. We'll talk through that in the ladder more. If Western Sydney can win games like this one, these tough battles, or even just get draws in them, I think that'll be a good step forward for them. But at the moment, yeah, they are looking like a squad that'll round out the numbers in the top 6, as opposed to being what I think Western Sydney fans are expecting, and what they really wanted from that Robinson revolution, which is that they're going to be back in the top 2 and challenging for league titles and continental qualification and all that sort of stuff that they've done previously in their history. So yeah, I think the door's not closed on Western Sydney, but these are the sort of games that they must win. More on must-win games and how to win games ugly in a moment when we talk about one of our next matches.
Yeah, I think that continental qualification, those top 2 spots or the top 3 spots, might be out of Western Sydney's reach for this season. Next season, I think once Carl Robinson has... Because he wanted Jugarkovic this season, and Newcastle were prepared to let him go. And fair enough, Newcastle stuck to their guns. Whether that was the right decision to make is we'll be talking about Newcastle later on. But for better or worse, Jugarkovic is with Newcastle this season. So I think once Robinson's had a full season with the squad, maybe he's got a couple of players out that he doesn't necessarily want at the moment and is able to bring in a couple of players that he does. Might see them compete, because when they're on form, they're playing a good brand of football, and I think if they can do that for a whole season, they're going to be hard to stop. But we'll move on now to the Mariners and the victory. A very ugly 1-1 draw played out here, as you see Marvin holding the safe smoke in all of his glory. This is what you want your mascots to be doing. Gritty can suck a... Actually, I'm not going to finish that sentence. Marvin's the best mascot, and we'll leave it at that. Victory managed to get a point on the road against the top of the table Mariners. Did Victory perform above expectations in this game, and should they have won it?
No. This is very much, I think, Victory got their goal. It was the opening goal, wasn't it? About 20 minutes in, Callum McManaman.
Yes.
Which, again, at that point, wasn't really against the run of play. I think one of the conversations that I've heard quite a bit, and I haven't really had... It was only once it was pointed out to me that I actually realised it was an issue. It was about like the fitness and conditioning of the Victory players and like how often they've got players injured and how often they struggle towards the end of games. And I 100% saw that. They took, I think, 3 players off due to injury. Dylan Ryan, Adama Traore, who picked up a knock. There was someone else as well. So they had to reshuffle their back line a couple of different times. They had players that looked absolutely wrecked. Like Jake Broom has played a lot of football this season, but like he looked absolutely knackered towards the end of the match, even though he is like, you know, a good player and capable of running out 90 minutes. I think that if McManaman and Butterfield hadn't had like championship experience where they're used to running for 90 minutes, like I wonder how fit and ready to go they'd be. Like they've got Victory. This was the first one where that issue really kind of became prevalent to me, and I'm not sure if it's always been there throughout the course of the season. I'm only just noticing it because I'm seeing Victory fans talking about it, or if it, you know, really came through. Central Coast are a very hard-working side. They'll make a lot of teams look unfit and behind play and behind pace and all that sort of stuff throughout the course of this season. That they're very hardworking. But this was 100% like the challenge was laid down for Central Coast with, you know, 70 minutes remaining in the match. Can they go on and find a winner? And they couldn't. That's why I kind of said their momentum has halted a little bit, because they've had a draw against Perth in the last couple of weeks. This draw again in games where I think they would have expected to get 3 points based on their early season form in the first 10 games of the year. And this was really about how did Mariners then kind of change and adjust their game plans or their shapes or their structures to get the most out of their players. Alul Kual didn't come on until the last 10 minutes when I think a lot of their fans would have been at 1-1 wanting to see him get like 30 minutes or, like a proper run in that side to really try and find a goal, because he has been that spark for them off the bench so many times. There was an interesting Twitter post, I'm not sure who it was by, but it did highlight like how much can a person be expected to do with 10 minutes of game time. And that's fair and that's true. Not that Matt Simon or Marco Urena played badly. I don't think they did, but clearly it was clear that it wasn't the night that they were going to really find the back of the net. Just that luck wasn't with them, or that sharpness wasn't with them, or the bounce of the ball didn't fall their way. But potentially, like for Kual, getting him out there a little bit earlier changes the dynamic. Or even for the Mariners, like go to 3 up top. Why not? If you're chasing a game at 1-1 that you really, I don't think Victory really threatened to score in the second half at all. But if they're in that position where they are on top, why not go to like a 4-3-3 and get 3 strikers up top and get Kual and Urena and Simon all up there together, just causing as much chaos as possible. So I think that was interesting. I'm not going to question Alan Stadic because I think he's earned benefit of the doubt in all these situations, that he knows what he's doing and knows what he's after. But I think certainly that Mariners fan perspective was we needed to make those changes earlier in the game to try and really get on top of Victory. I do think this is more Mariners dropped 2 points than Victory gained 1, if that makes sense.
Yep, it makes sense. How much can a player actually do with 10 minutes to go? That's something the Sydney FC fans have been asking for years. Are the Mariners starting to falter a little bit? As you mentioned, they've only got 2 points out of their last 9 available. Or is this just a mid-season rough patch? And more conversely, how much does the relaying of the pitch actually play into this by the council, who chose a horrendous time to relay the pitch, given that they did it just before Mariners returned from a lengthy road trip?
Yeah, well, it was that portion that they spoke about, and then they also spoke about like their inability to train at the moment due to like that touch competition or whatever it is on a bone dry pitch and like the flooding that's been going on in New South Wales. New South Wales has been through hell in the last like kind of 6 weeks, but that's just another layer that you put on top of it. I don't think the Mariners still aren't playing badly. Like, they're still a good side. I think they're getting Gianni Stensness back has been good for them. But like, they haven't won games since he's come back, so it's kind of a weird paradox. Him and Bozanic I thought were excellent. I thought Nisbet was excellent while he was away, while Stensness was out, sorry. I think Danny De Silva's been good. I think this is more just we've seen throughout the course of the season, and maybe we'll talk about this more when we get to like Brisbane and some of the other sides on the table, like where teams that have started the season very strongly have started that way because they had the added advantage of like access to facilities and full off-season programs and all that sort of stuff that maybe the Victorian teams didn't necessarily have last year. That maybe, you know, some of the, like Wellington didn't have the best preseason program, and they've kind of not been bad, but, you know, you can see them really having to push uphill to catch up. I think this is more just the competition itself as everybody gets into form, and more importantly, everyone gets into fitness, the same levels of fitness. We're going to start seeing that separation of different teams. I don't think even the most passionate Mariners fan would have thought that they were going to keep up their scoring rate and their winning rate all the way through the season, that these blips were going to come. I don't know if this is necessarily a reflection of how they're at, given that they have, as you mentioned, pick up 2 points from 9. I think they will get back to winning ways. I think they work too hard, and I think they've got too good a squad dynamic for that to really disappear entirely. But I do think that they're going to get reeled in by City and potentially another team that we'll talk about in a moment in terms of the top position. So I could see them still finishing potentially top 4. But yeah, I think this is more just reflective of how hot their start was, and now other teams are catching up to that form.
Yep. I guess the only reason that they may stay in the top 4 is because of the inability of the teams below them. We've mentioned the Wanderers will struggle against the top teams, and they have. Sydney FC, who we're going to talk about in a moment as well, are still struggling with their finishing. So just little things like that are just what's going to keep the Mariners in the top 4 if they continue to struggle with their current form.
And I guess it's like they haven't lost these games. They'd be frustrated by the draw with Perth, but the conditions were really tough. They'd be frustrated by this draw with Victory, but like, you know, they're not losing those games. I still think they would beat most of the other teams in the top 8 at the moment, particularly at home. So yeah, I would think it's a blip, and I think they get back to winning ways. Do they keep up the consistency that they had throughout the first 10 games of the season? Probably not. But, you know, like I still think they're a good side and a good shout for either a top 4 or a top 6 finish.
Yep, no, that's definitely a way to look at it. What we might do is we might take a quick break to help sort through some of these technical issues. And we'll come back and talk about Perth Glory and the Newcastle Jets. Yep, there we go.
We're back. We're back.
Apologies for the technical issues. We tried to fix some stuff on the back end, and it just, for whatever reason, stuff's coming through on a delay. So we're trying to sort that out. So apologies for that. This will all be fixed tomorrow. So if you want to watch this issue free, please check out the upload on YouTube. What a performance this game was for the Glory. They've had to work incredibly hard for their 4 points this week. A 1-1 draw against Sydney, in which Liam Reddy played absolutely out of his skin and did not have one of his trademarked Liam Reddy howlers, much to my chagrin, if you saw my Twitter timeline on Wednesday night. Should they have got 6 from 6? And how do you think they handled the pressure on Saturday night against the Jets, going down to 10 men after just 35 minutes?
No, not 6 from 6, I don't think. The same issues that I've got with Glory are the same issues I've had for the last 4 weeks, where they're tactically inflexible, even despite being under pressure. Like, most people would have looked at that game midweek and said, okay, we need to change something, or we need to go with an extra body in midfield, or we need to drop our fullbacks deeper to stop this overload, or we need to drop our wingers a bit deeper into a 4-4-2. And Richie Garcia just doesn't. He just plays the same shape and formation, and all he does is move around the individuals that are a part of it. So yeah, my same criticisms remain the same for Perth Glory, and the same in this game as well. I think if this was any team other than Newcastle Jets, they probably don't hold on to the win. And the real difference maker for me was the man on screen, Diego Castro. I think late on, he just took it upon himself to just play at the top of the 18-yard box, and that was it. And that was all he was going to do. Like, I think he spent the last 15 minutes not on a wing, just in and around the box and doing whatever, tracking additional runners because they were just throwing bodies forward. Like, and that was the difference for me. Like, Newcastle, like, I like Newcastle, I want Newcastle to do well, but they just don't have the quality that other teams do across the pitch, and that was really the difference in this one. Perth being able to call on the likes of Fornaroli to hold up the ball as 10 men, for Castro to be able to be a outlet for possession where they know that even though they are down to 10, he's probably going to keep possession against 2 or 3 players, such as his ability. And then, the ability to like bring Andy Keogh off the bench. Even though he didn't really do much other than get called offside, he at least gave them running. He at least gave them an outlet. Like, I think that's the big difference here. Like, Perth Glory were able to see out this game because they had depth in quality that they were able to bring onto the pitch where they needed to. And then the 10 players that they had out there, they had... It is a weird thing to say, but they actually probably had the right person sent off, so to speak, where it didn't actually kill their momentum or their shape all that much. They got to bring on another defender for Aspro Potomides, and then other players were having a good game. Jason Correa, I thought, was excellent on his debut for Perth, solving that right back scenario. Dane Ingham played relatively well. He was the one that came off for the change. Kieran Bramwell got his first goal. Congrats to him. Daryl Lockman, who's getting a bit more comfortable in the division week to week as the other central defender, he scored a good header as well. So, yeah, I think that was really the difference. The overall quality and overall depth of the squad was what won this game for Perth, as opposed to really anything else, because they were put under pressure, really not necessarily for the first half. I think it took a while for Newcastle to kind of get used to the scenario and situation of having all the ball and not being a little bit backs to the wall. But yeah, they really did try their best to put them under pressure for 30 minutes. And the challenge is for Newcastle, most A-League sides with 30 minutes and a man advantage will find a way to at least create a clear-cut chance. And I'm not sure there were that many that Newcastle actually found. I think Roy O'Donovan's leading a charmed life at the moment, where if he was at any other club, he'd have probably been dropped already. But because he's at Newcastle and they don't have that depth up front, he's kind of getting away with it a little bit. But I think Perth, good value for their win in this one, and deserving 3 points. But yeah, 100% just any other club in the division, I think, would have reeled them back in.
Yep, so Perth head back to New South Wales now for a 3-game road trip, facing Sydney, Macarthur and Newcastle in that order. Is 4 points the bare minimum that they need to get from these 3 games? A draw against either Macarthur or Sydney, and what you would expect to be another win against Newcastle?
No, they need to beat one of them. So I think they need to beat Newcastle. I think they need to beat one of Macarthur and Sydney as well on that road trip. So they sit in 7th spot at the moment. They are slowly running out of games in hand, which has been kind of like their fan base and Twitter and whatever else has sort of spoken about Perth's games in hand that they've got on the rest of the competition. They're up to 12 now. So there are other teams that have also played 12. Melbourne City are in that group. Brisbane Roar in that group. Western United have now only played 11. They need to probably beat Perth if they want to get above Perth, because I don't think their game in hand is necessarily the guaranteed win that they think it is. And for Macarthur at the moment are probably not playing very well, but they're beating a lot of the teams that are around them in the league and effectively creating that 6-point split where they get 3 points and the team near them doesn't. So there's that big goal swing. So if they have a realistic chance still for Perth to finish in the top 4, they need to get 6 points out of these next 3 games. I think they will against Newcastle, given the advantage that they'll hopefully stay with 11 men on the park. But yeah, they're really going to need to try and beat Sydney or Macarthur if they want a realistic chance of getting into the top 6.
Okay, would 5 points be emaugh then? Get a draw against both teams. That way, they're not losses, and they haven't necessarily let either both Macarthur and Sydney get 2 points on them, but it's also not 2 points they've been able to claw back.
I guess the bigger portion for them is you got to look at what's looming over their shoulder. Brisbane Roar have also played the same amount of games now, and based on the scenario in Brisbane, will probably have games in hand that potentially could be home games, because Brisbane games will get cancelled, but their away trips should hopefully, if they can get dispensation of travel, still go ahead. So I think, yeah, the big advantage that Perth is looking at having, which is that they were potentially going to have in April, I think like 4 or 5 home games at NIB to really try and get maximum points. Brisbane's going to have that as well, and Brisbane are only a point behind them. So I think they do need to get 2 wins. I know it's only 1 point, and we're arguing minutiae there, like 5 versus 6 points, but I think it's more they need to get victories and they need to get wins and they need to prevent other teams from getting any points at all. I don't think they are going to go over there and win most of their games. I don't think their away form has been strong enough throughout the course of the season so far where that is going to happen. But that's kind of the gauntlet that I'd throw down to them and to their fan base is if they come out of that with 6 points, then yeah, maybe we have seen them turn the corner relating to their away form. And if they can figure their away form out in the second half of the season, that's how I think they make their push into top 6. They're not going to be able to get into this final series, given how even the division is, based on purely the strength of their home form, where the league's just, I think, evolved beyond that.
Yep. what's going on in Newcastle? They get a break in the form of a red card, 60 minutes against 10 men, and they still can't capitalise. Do they deserve to be the wooden spooners? And in all honesty, should they have just let Ugarkovic go rather than argue, he needs to pay out the rest of his contract?
No, he's a contracted player. You got to honour your contract. Like, that's it. There's no at the moment. The only thing that would have allowed him to go was a mutual termination, and when you do a mutual termination, you in turn then have to pay out the person the rest of their contract in most instances. So no, like, they probably couldn't afford to pay out his contract for a lump sum amount at that particular time. So no, they shouldn't have let him go. He should honour his contract, see out his deal, and do effectively what he has done, which is, in the last 6 months of his contract, sign a pre-contract agreement to move to the next club, which we see all the time in the A-League. And Stephen, as you slowly get more and more ingrained in football manager culture, you'll start paying attention to when people get in the last 6 months of their contract at an A-League level. So, no, I think the way it played out was the right way to do it for everything. I think Newcastle had already done their share of mutual terminations with Bernie Beanie. Like, you can't have players not honouring contracts. That's just not good. Forget the Newcastle portion. That's a bad precedent to set for the entirety of the league. Similar parallels between, like, Max Burgess not playing at Western United because he won't honour his contract. And they were happy to let him sit down for 6 months and say, okay, you've got to honour your contract, or we're not going to pay you. We're not going to play you. Your value as a player will go down. He's now going to get that mutual termination because they've come to an agreement heading into the last 6 months of his contract. And he'll end up probably with your mob at Sydney FC, which is, like, that shouldn't happen. I think the additional interesting portion is that Western Sydney part own Newcastle under the current ownership arrangement, with, some Football Australia assets, some Sydney FC assets. So it's shady that, a club that owns another club can be impacting clubs releasing players and whatever else. So I think in terms of being transparent and making the season as successful as possible, Ugarkovic had to stay. One of Ugarkovic and Abini had to stay. And I don't think Abini was going to play ever again for Newcastle. I think he'd made that clear. I don't think they're the worst team in the division still, because they go out and have a crack. And even though they didn't get the result here against 10 men and they didn't create that many clear-cut scoring chances, they are still giving opportunities to young players in the division, like Luca Perso, like Rami Nazarene. They just need more bodies and they need more overall depth of quality. That's the real challenge. You look at that Newcastle squad and you look at their starting 11, which isn't super strong, but then you look at their bench and they've got maybe, like, depending if Valentino Yule is starting or on the bench, like, who's going to come off that bench and change the game entirely? There isn't really that player there. And I think that's what hurts them quite a bit. We haven't seen much of Krasniqi. They're kind of like big money, not big money, but big name loanee signing, who's joined from the Malaysian side, Johor DT. And then there's another Malaysian player in that squad that we haven't seen, I think, in a lot, like, even on the bench yet. So, yeah, they're trying. I think they're doing their best to try and create that depth in quality and try and create that competition for places. Their big drop-off is that they didn't have Nigel Bogart as well. I think if he is playing, then Darryl Lockman doesn't power that head home. And I think, Kieran Bracewell, it was a lovely dummy from Osama Malik. Congrats to him for, I think, having his second kid, a little person called Hakeem, throughout the course of the week as well. Lots of babies in the leagues at the moment. But yeah, I think that's a big defeat for them. And then it shows that, like, Lachlan Jackson, people kind of think is 21, but he's not. He's 26. He's been around the division quite a while. It's just a big drop off in the overall quality. They've not got Katrumbas at the moment. Like, their depth being tested is what's causing them the biggest challenge. But I think they're still a better side, and I think they still attempt to play better football than Melbourne Victory does.
Yep, no, that's a fair assessment. You mentioned the part ownership and just the way that's going at the moment. That's something that will need to be sorted before next season, because I don't think that from a competition standpoint we can have another season of teams owning other teams, which I'm surprised that the AFC hasn't already tried to fix that. Or maybe they have behind the scenes and it just hasn't come out publicly, because that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I think technically the way it's working is that technically Football Australia has, like, recovered the license. The license hasn't been handed to Sydney FC or Western Sydney. I think the contributions they're making are purely financial, if that makes sense. So I think technically it's still Football Australia, which is why the AFC wouldn't be worried about it. But yes, I would agree with the same thing. And credit to Western Sydney or Sydney FC. I don't think anyone could be critical, because they've done the right thing to make sure that Newcastle has a team in the division this season. But yeah, echoing the same point as you, they would need to resolve that. I just don't know how easy that journey is going to be. I don't think many people are looking at Newcastle as being like a sound investment. in terms of like getting your money back or really looking at the squad and the skeleton that they've got of a team there. Like, how are they going to get back into finals football? So, yeah, I think Football Australia may potentially be owning that license for a little while, but, I'd love to be proven wrong and love to see someone come in who's football minded and in for the long haul and, really looking to continue the journey that Newcastle are on.
Yes, and we talked about that last week as well here on the weekend recap when we looked at expansion, relocation, coming in, like other bodies coming in, like the City Football Group. So go check that out, as that was a fascinating discussion we had. We will move on, though, to our Sunday fixtures. Wellington versus Macarthur. It was a tough outing for the Knicks to end Wollongong Appreciation Month. Dennis Jonro scoring the 65th minute winner here. How much does this loss hurt Wellington, given that a victory would have put them just outside the top 6? They're only 4 points out as it currently stands, but 1 point out is a lot better than 4 points out, given that they've played a couple more games than some of the teams inside the 6.
So full disclosure, I didn't watch this one live. I watched the mini match, and if you watched the mini match, this looks like a smash and grab job for Macarthur, where Wellington were the better side and had the majority of the chances in the first half and in the second half, and really put pressure on late on to try and find a winner, but just couldn't do it. And I don't know. Wellington have been a puzzling one this season. Yes, they've got challenges that kind of excuse a lot of the issues that they're facing, but I think they've tried to resolve issues relating to how they control midfields and how they play in defence by signing additional strikers. Like, Ball and Hamed should be smashing most teams as far as the top 2 is concerned, but the supply isn't necessarily there. Reno Piscopo's gone down with an injury now, and that provides a challenge where Clayton Lewis isn't a bad player, but he's definitely not at the same level of quality and isn't creating the same effective chances. De Villa is still one of the best players in the division. I think he'd be in most people's teams of the season so far. So they've got that quality there, but they're not really looking at the right areas, where I don't think they've found the right midfield balance for that midfield too. I don't think Rufer and Devlin is working the way that different combinations of Devlin and Steinman were last season, and Rufer and Steinman. So I think that's provided a challenge. I think there's also, different elements as well where their defenses, struggle. Stephen Taylor came off with about 10 minutes into the game with either a half-pull groin or whatever else. Josh Laws came on. It was an actual howler from Tim Payne that led to the goal, where I don't know what he tried to do. It was just a wild clearance, but it pushed it goalwards, and Oliver Sale, who had a great game throughout the course of the match, pushed it straight back into the path of Denny Jonro. And other than that, Macarthur didn't create a whole lot of great chances, but they found a way to win. The same way that I've said about Western Sydney, that they need to find a way to win these tough games and find a way to get good results and persevere. Macarthur are actually doing that at the moment, and Macarthur are answering that question, where how are they going to continue to get results? How are they going to continue to grind out performances? And it'll be the difference between sides like Macarthur grinding out ugly 1-0 wins when they're not the better side, and who doesn't do that as to who finishes in those top 4 spots. So credit to Macarthur grinding it out, but Wellington desperately need to start winning games where they are in the ascendancy for the majority of that time.
Okay, how important was this win for Macarthur, given that it puts them well back inside the top 6, given that their form has been questionable over the last few weeks?
Yeah, up, down. I think this takes them to 3 wins in 5, if that makes sense, and 2 defeats along the way as well. So they don't really do draws at the moment, Macarthur. They are all or nothing as far as points are concerned, but a very important one. I think it takes them to 7 wins and 2 draws, 5 defeats, and it puts them back. It puts them back above Western Sydney. So at the moment, the way I'm looking at it, there's a top 3 that are kind of arguably all trying to get that top spot. And they're continuing to push all week, and I would put City and Mariners, who we've already spoken about, on one other side in that group. And then I think there's a 3 to 6 at the moment, which is Macarthur, Western Sydney and Sydney FC, who are all jockeying for a similar position, which is 4th spot, with a view that in the last 10 games of the season they'll really try and put a run of form together. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm thinking. And similar to what we just spoke about with Perth, do I see Perth as being better than Macarthur? No, not really. Not at the moment. I don't even really see them being better than Wellington, but Wellington have questions that they need to answer, and they have form that they need to find desperately, because they're running out of games to find the points that they need to jump back up into that top 6 discussion.
Yep. We'll move on now to that other team that you mentioned, rounding out that top 3, all competing for first place. Adelaide United versus Sydney FC. From a neutral's perspective, this game had everything. From a Sydney FC perspective, this game was filled with nothing but frustration. Although I don't think Sydney can be too disappointed by this 1-0 loss. Adelaide are the other team in the division that are on a 6-game winning streak along with Melbourne City, and they've started to be able to perform both home and away. I'm going to ask you the same questions that I asked you with Melbourne City. Can they maintain this momentum all season, or are they peaking too early?
No, I don't. So the question that we'd kind of asked about them probably like 4 weeks ago now on the recap was that they needed to find consistent performances away from home. And yes, the draw has favoured them a little bit where they played Melbourne Victory and Western Sydney and a few other sides in succession. But they've met every test and they've won all those games. So, and if you remember, they did beat Melbourne City earlier on in the season. So I think they're capable of showing that they are able to go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the division. And I include Sydney in that discussion. Even though Sydney are down in 6th spot at the moment, I still include them as being like a big game side, so to speak. Yep. And I thought Adelaide were good value for their win. I know certain people were aggrieved by the penalty. I felt that it was a penalty, albeit unlucky, but it was still contact that prevented Yangi from going after the ball, and he got to it first. Did he need to throw his head back? Probably not. I get why people are frustrated. At the same time, I don't think Sydney created that much in terms of clear-cut chances. Your mate Costa had a couple early on in the match where he got strikes away, but they weren't necessarily like the highest quality chances. And then again, like I've said this how many weeks in a row now, Stephen, Patrick Wood just changed his games when he comes on. And give big shout out to Joe Gauci for a phenomenal save from a Patrick Wood diving header in like the 90th minute, which was huge. Like I just don't... For Sydney FC, I don't know why they are reeling in Patrick Wood so much, unless they're like worried about his overall fitness over 90 minutes. He doesn't look like he struggles for fitness or strength or conditioning or anything like that. Throughout the course of a game, he looks like an absolute beast as a 19-year-old player. But like I don't know what further else he could do. Also worth mentioning as well, Bobo potentially could have been sent off about 20 minutes in.
And we're going to get to that in a minute because there's a lot of things I want to talk about with that, but I'll let you finish your point first.
No, go for it. Like this is Sydney FC. Like people want to hear your stuff.
Okay, so you've already mentioned the finishing a little bit. They're doing 99% of the job all across the park. They're doing exactly what you want your top sides to be doing, what your dominant sides in the competition should be doing, except for sticking it in the back of the net. I don't know where their finishing is going to come from. I mean, save for Liam Reddy having a hell of a performance, they probably pick up 3 points in Perth. That was a game that was just filled with frustration. That was, Ivanovic had an absolute blinder in that game, and this is, if you go back and watch that performance, it's one of the things why people ask me, well, why are you so high on Ivanovic? Because that is what Ivanovic can do at his best. The only thing he couldn't do was stick in the back of the net, and that's not just limited to him. That's limited to the entire Sydney FC attacking line at the moment. That just can't put it in the back of the net. And they couldn't get past Joe Gauci here. We saw a point where they could have potentially gone down to 9 men, and you touched on it. Bobo, look, for me, he should have been sent off in the 35th minute. And as much as I've just praised Luka Ivanovic, I had no idea what he was doing once he came on and channeled his inner 80s bad karate movie with a kick to the face. I have no idea how he got away without a red card there. I maybe could hazard a guess that because the Adelaide player was leaning in, that was the only thing that was Sean Evans, the ref for this one, saw.
He was. This is a weird one, but like if Jordan Elsey hadn't have just like gotten up and like tried to shirt front Bobo, I think if he had rolled around on the ground, I think Bobo gets sent off. And same one with this one, like the Adelaide players just got up and got on with it. Like I think for the Ivanovic one, I think it was accidental contact, but like, Strain really just kind of like rubbed his head a little bit for a second and then got up and got on with it. Like, I think if they had been like rolling around on the floor, holding their arms or clutching their shins or whatever else, I think Sydney might have been in a bit more trouble. So credit to Adelaide teams for like getting up and getting on with the games. But it was 2 interesting flashpoints. And then there was still, I think, an element on Twitter that was highlighting that like it was never a penalty. And again, we've seen racist abuse for Ksenia Yangi, and I don't think it's necessarily Sydney FC fans doing it. I think it's just a horrific element of our society which has no place in the game or in the world. But it's just This is, and I know you're not going to necessarily agree with this, but like Sydney FC always feel like aggrieved at certain things, but then you kind of, if you are a neutral watching those matches, you're like, yeah, but you also benefited from X, Y, and Z throughout the course of the 90 minutes. Like football ebbs and flows, and I think football naturally tends to balance itself out over the course of a season.
No, I do agree with that, and that's why I think that despite the questionable penalty call, and we'll call it questionable because on another day that's probably not given, and something tells me we're not going to hear the VAR from this one either. What is it with Adelaide questionable penalty calls at the moment?
It was 100% a penalty. Like do I agree that I don't think it's had anything to do with VAR. He got to the ball first, and he potentially could have, from that touch, gotten to the ball again if he hadn't been kicked. And yes, it's unfortunate. I think Bratton probably came out the worst because of where that contact took place, where he's kicking upward and coming up into the bottom of Yengi's foot, which is coming down to try and take his next step and then regain his balance. But that penalty gets given most games throughout the course of this season. That's just the reality of where we're at with VAR and with slowing everything down in 30 frames a second to figure out exactly where contact is. He got to the ball first, so I 100% think that was a penalty.
Fair enough. But despite that, I don't think Sydney can complain about it, even if it was that questionable call, because of the way that things played out in this game. I think Bobo should have been sent off. I think Ivanovic was very lucky not to be sent off as well. That would have put Sydney down to 9 men, and unlike Perth Glory the night before, I don't think Sydney survived throughout this game with 10 men, because both those instances happened at very similar times throughout the match, that 35th minute mark. So I think if Bobo gets sent off, I don't think they do Perth Glory and survive for 60 minutes. I do want to talk about a positive though. How good was that save from Joe Gauchi? Regardless of how much that pains me as a Sydney fan, because you just thought Sydney were going to get sneak out with a point there. That save, can we call that the save of the season right now? I don't mean is that the save of the season so far? I mean, when we're talking about the save of the season after the next couple of months, will we come back to this save and that is going to be the save of the season?
Yeah, it was the best one of the game. There were a few good saves, actually. There were a couple from Craig Goodwin that Andrew Redmayne pulled out, and both of them are just that lizard brain type thing where the keeper doesn't know how they're actually doing it. It's just their reaction time or whatever else to make the movement do whatever else. I don't think Gauchi knew 100% what he was doing with this one, but he managed to find a way to claw it out and over. And credit to him, he didn't start the season as being potentially Adelaide's number one, with Delianov starting most of the games and having a little bit of an issue at the start, but then getting into some good form. But I think even when Delianov's fit, I think they'd be tough to drop Gauchi based on his current form. But yeah, I think we'll come back and have a look at it for sure throughout the course of the season. But a good game for both goalkeepers, I thought.
Yes. Now, if only Fox Sports had more cameras, we could appreciate that save in all of its marvellous beauty from every single angle. But that's enough about my crash with Fox Sports for this week. I only had the one. We'll take a look at the ladder now. Melbourne victory in 12th spot with 8 points, 2, and 9 on the season. Newcastle Jets just above them at 3, 2, and 9 on the season with 11 points. 4, 2, and 5 for Western United, 14 points in 10th. 4, 3, and 7 on the season for Wellington in 9th spot with 15 points. 4, 4, and 4, and how good does that look? Just from a nice calming perspective, at a nice even 4, 4, and 4 for Brisbane. Although I'm sure Brisbane fans disagree with me there, with 16 points. 5, 2, and 5 for the Glory at 17 points, just outside the 6th there in 7th. Sydney FC 5, 4, and 4 on the season with 19 points at the bottom of the 6th. 6, 4, and 4 for the Wanderers with 22 points in 5th spot. The top 4 is MacArthur, 23 points at 7, 2, and 5 on the season. Melbourne City 8, 0, and 4. Surprising that Melbourne City haven't had a draw yet. With 24 points in 3rd spot. 8, 1, and 4 for Adelaide. The draw being the only difference there for Adelaide. with 25 points in second spot and 26 points still on top after 14 games played at 8-2-4 on the season is the Central Coast Mariners. That is it for us for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in and sticking with us throughout the technical issues. If you want to go back and have a look at anything you may have missed throughout those technical issues, this will be up on YouTube at some point tomorrow. Follow us on Twitter at ReserveTeamAU, where we send out all our content. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to be alerted as the second it goes up. And check out all our amazing content on the reserveteam.com.au. Shaun, where can people find your stuff?
Oh, yeah, just wherever you can find great reserve team quality content. Like, the links are down below for the website and the Twitter and the Twitch and the YouTube and all that sort of great stuff. But yeah, more than anything, I think we just appreciate people watching along with us.
Yes, and also check out Shaun on YouTube at what is it, In the Mixer FM?
Just in the Mixer on YouTube.
Just in the Mixer. Currently going through the Pentagon Challenge on Football Manager, putting out great content every week for that. So go and check that out. You can tune in tomorrow night right here on Twitch for our Football Manager save every single week, where a number of our reserve team contributors play through a national second division save to get us all excited for the upcoming, well, what we believe is still an upcoming national second division in the coming years. You hit me up on Twitter at Poletti Steven. I'm always happy to discuss football, ice hockey, Quidditch, or just whatever in general. I'm happy to interact with anyone and everyone. So I'm Steven Poletti. He has been Shaun Mathieson. Thank you for joining us this week, and we will see you next week.